Hi dear subscribers, most watch me without a subscription, support my channel with a subscription, and I will make you happy with new story. Story 1. Aita for hating that my ex is living with my parents? At the start of this year, I, 29F, was stalked and harassed by a woman who believed that I was having an affair with her husband. It was over a month of daily harassment over phone, on social media, and at times even in public. She even threw a stone through my window and vandalized my car in my driveway. She was caught on security camera and charges were brought against her. I had to spend a lot on lawyers to threaten legal suits against both the husband and wife to get her to back off. She was having some sort of a mental breakdown and went into a psych hold. Her meds helped and she agreed to stop and accepted that I wasn't the involved party. As part of our legal agreement, she made social media posts apologizing and clearing my name and some financial recompense for damages caused. During all this, my fiancé, 32M, was of no help at all. We lived together and he wouldn't do anything to support me. When I got accosted in public places, he'd simply leave. When our condo was attacked, he got in his car and left to stay with a friend. He said it was too embarrassing for him to stay around. He didn't seem to realize that I was scared and felt my life was in danger. He knew that I was innocent in this, and yet he didn't stop his friends and family from believing the worst about me and making snide comments at me. I begged him to help me, and he'd act frustrated as if there was nothing he could do here. When the woman harassing me made the apology posts, I forwarded them everywhere explaining how I got caught up in someone else's tragedy, and I called my fiancé a coward for his behavior. Which was also my way of publicly breaking up with him. My parents were very supportive of me throughout this mess, and they gave me money for the lawyer's retainer. But they didn't like my public food to my ex. They said that it was petty of me and asked me to be nicer and not break up. I did eventually remove his name from my posts, but I was not interested in any relationship with him anymore. After this all went away, I was still pretty traumatized and paranoid. I quit my job and I couldn't stand living with my ex. My best friend lived a few states away and she invited me to stay with her as a change of scenery. It was the break I needed. I also found a great job there while I was visiting and decided to settle there. I've been living in this town since then. I have booked tickets to visit my family for Christmas, and last night my mother told me that my ex is staying with them as a house guest. My mother said he wasn't doing too well after I left and my parents let him move in with them. I don't want to see my ex, and I am pretty hurt that my parents are taking care of this man who did not stand by me. Wipta, if I tell my parents I am not visiting as long as he's in their home? Aita deleted my previous post because of mention of violence. But there was no violence in there. I had mentioned harassment and vandalism, but no violence happened. I had logged into update and can't do it on Aita, so we'll write down here for people who've been messaging me. I didn't go home for Christmas. I called my parents and told them I wasn't coming, and that set off a lot of recrimination and arguing. My mom getting upset at me for my coldness and my dad reprimanding me for breaking mom's heart. Mom is trying to get me back together with ex. Dad goes along with whatever mom wants to do. I asked them why they'd want me to be with someone who didn't protect me, and Mom said if the stalker was a man he'd have protected me, but it was just a woman, a lady from a good home, so there wasn't any real danger. This was news to me because when it was happening both were worried about my safety, but now they are downplaying it. This is the exact argument ex had used and they are buying into his story. Then Mom goes into how this was embarrassing for ex and says I wronged him by putting him in this situation. This brought up a long history of Mom's disappointment in me. I was never what she wanted me to be. I know she loves me and had thought our differences were the typical mother-daughter conflict that everyone has. But my mom has fears that run deeper than that. She is a slim, svelte, and pretty woman who is very particular about manners and appearances. I got my build from my dad's side of the family, and I am very curvy with large breasts. My weight and my figure has been a cause for concern for my mom, who'd pressure me to cover up and downplay it. She wanted me to go into teaching or medicine, but I didn't do well enough in school for that. I ended up forming a career in sales, and I am very good at it. I was making good money at a large corporation, and while I dress modestly, I was no longer wearing baggy clothes, but professional suits with a good fit. The fact that I look like I do and that I do sales was scandalous to my mother. The guy whose affair brought problems in my life is a manager in the same company I used to work for. We worked on the same floor in different departments. I think he let me take the fall because knowing who he was having the affair with would have put his job in jeopardy and would have been a lot more scandalous. My mother thinks the wife putting the blame on me was inevitable because I have the look. She thinks her fears about my appearance and career had come true in this incident. She is horrified that instead of learning from my mistakes, I now have a job that is client relationship manager even though it is at a financial firm. She feels pressured to force me to come home and get married and leave my career behind. I am so sad about how all this has turned out. My relationship ended and now I am losing my parents. Meanwhile, that cheating man and his psycho wife are still married and he still has the same job. She is horrified that instead of learning from my mistakes, I now have a job that is client relationship manager even though it is at a financial firm. She feels pressured to force me to come home and get married and leave my career behind. I am so sad about how all this has turned out. My relationship ended and now I am losing my parents. Meanwhile, that cheating man and his psycho wife are still married and he still has the same job. Comments. His parents retired and are living in a warmer state. My parents had really liked him and his parents are also family friends that they want to be on good terms with. So I get it to an extent. But having him living in their house is too much. I do feel betrayed. But people around me say that my anger is unreasonable. I had started therapy before I had moved and my therapist also said that my anger at my ex was misplaced. I have a new therapist now and they are focused on my PTSD. When this started, my first worry was my fiancé. I gave him access to everything to show him that I had no contact with this guy. He always said he believed me, but then he'd do nothing. Every time it was, "What do you expect me to do?" I'd tell him what he ought to do and he'd just ignore that. When it was just the two of us, he did all the right stuff, comforted me while I cried, took me to doctor appointments since I had developed insomnia, made me my favorite meals. But outside of that, he wanted to hide and not deal. Story 2. I gave my son $800 in gifts and my daughter $4,000 in cash. He took it badly. Our son is 22 and our daughter is 26. She bought a house in July. We know that moving into a new home always comes with unexpected costs right after you've probably depleted most of your funds. So, for Christmas we gave her $4,000. Our son, we gave a few different gifts totaling somewhere around $800. Our daughter had to work Christmas, but we did Christmas on the 26th and she stayed with us for the holidays from then until yesterday. Our son still lives with us, and today he told us both that he didn't want to say anything while his sister was here, but his feelings were hurt by the disparity in the value of the gifts. We explained that the gifts we got him were tailored to his interests, but his sister has just passed a big life milestone where money is more important to her right now than sentiment. He said it's still hurtful because it feels like we are more proud of her than him. My wife got really frustrated when he said that and asked why he would choose the least charitable interpretation of our actions. He said that's just how he felt and he couldn't control it. I said that we didn't give her money because we were more proud, but because we had experience being new homeowners and knowing that something always breaks in that first 6 months and it's always expensive. He said that was all fine and good, but it still hurt to get a worse present and feel like an afterthought. My wife asked if he expected us to get him $4,000 worth of gifts. He said no, but he expected the gifts between him and his sister to be equal. My wife said that's the same thing, and my son said it isn't. He said we could have given her the monetary equivalent of what we gave him. I told him that it isn't really fair for him to decide how much we spend on someone else's gift. Furthermore, cash is less personal than gifts, so giving her a cash equivalent to what he got would be her getting the worst gift. He said we weren't listening to him, just justifying. My wife said we didn't need to justify anything, and he was being entitled. At that point, he said he didn't want to talk unless everyone was civil, and he went to his room. He skipped lunch, breakfast for him, today, and when he left for work, he didn't say goodbye even though I was right by the door. My wife is irritated, and my son is clearly resenting us. I can't really decide if we're in the wrong here. On the one hand, we should be able to give our money to whoever we want. On the other, I never want to hurt my son's feelings. Were we wrong? Update: a couple of days ago, I posted elsewhere about a conversation my wife and I had with our son. People reacted very strongly, and I wanted to let everyone know what happened next, but that isn't permitted where I originally posted. I still wanted to get it off my chest, so this seemed an appropriate place. We sat down with our son again to talk. Things started out similar to yesterday, but then he asked if we wished he didn't live at home anymore. My wife and I assured him that nothing could be less true. He said it feels like we are waiting for him to move out. He said his sister moved out at 21, and he's 22 now, so he feels like we are waiting for him to leave. I said we had no control over when his sister left and asked what we did specifically to make him feel that way. He said it just did. At this point, my wife became frustrated and asked if he considered our feelings. Our son asked what she meant, and she pointed out that he never said thank you for his presents. He said he liked them, and my wife said that wasn't the same as thanks and pointed out that she and I said thank you for ours, but he didn't say thank you for his. At this point they were both frustrated, so I asked if we could all take a minute. My son thanked us for his presents, which was nice. My wife said that our son was asking if we valued his presence in our lives, but she wanted to know if he valued ours and his, or if he was just using us for free housing. Our son started crying, which felt awful to see. He said that he did value us, but that he felt like he could never catch up to us. I told him, don't try to catch up to us. We had a 2-decade head start, and you'll exhaust yourself if you try to do that. Just go at your own pace. Our son asked how we would feel if he's never successful like his sister is. I asked him, why do you think that your sister is successful and you aren't? She bought a house, but that's not everything in life. She did that for herself, because she wanted it, not to reach an arbitrary metric of success. All that matters is if you are happy in life. Our son was quiet for a bit and then admitted that he wasn't happy. My wife asked what would make him happy, and he said he didn't know. I asked if there was anything specific making him unhappy. He said his job. He said he hates working swing shift and feels tired all the time. I said, okay, quit your job, or go to part-time and work 2 6-hour shifts a week if you are worried about a gap in your resume. He asked if we would be disappointed if he quit, and my wife said we will never be disappointed in him for trying to find his happiness. I said, younger siblings look up to older ones and try to copy them sometimes. That was my brother and I when I was younger too, but you aren't your sister. This isn't a race, and you aren't on a time limit. You don't have to find your dream job or move out by a specific date. Just find what will make you happy. He said he would talk to his supervisor today about switching to part-time or taking a leave of absence. I hope it goes well, because I don't want him to continue to feel dragged down by work. I don't think the situation is resolved, because there are hurt feelings on both sides, but I do think we made progress. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Thank you.